In a dramatic shift that could reshape North American defense cooperation, Canada is considering abandoning its $13 billion F-35 fighter jet deal with the United States, marking a turning point in the strained relationship between the two allies. Prime Minister Mark Carney stated on March 12 that Canada needs to understand that it cannot trust the United States on everything, suggesting a review of the F-35 project. This statement signals growing frustration with Washington's trade policies. Defense Minister Bill Blair confirmed during a Parliament Hill press conference that in light of recent tensions with the United States, it has become inevitable to reevaluate the F-35 purchase agreement. Blair indicated that Canada is exploring European alternatives. The crisis stems from trade disputes. The Biden administration's continuation of Trump-era policies, including tariffs on Canadian steel, aluminum, and agricultural products, has pushed Ottawa toward a strategic reassessment of its defense procurement strategy. Canada has faced economic pressures from its southern neighbor. The White House's threat to revisit trade agreements unless Canada adjusts quotas has heightened tensions, leading officials to question their dependence on U.S. military hardware. Industry experts suggest that European alternatives like the Eurofighter Typhoon or France's Rafale could be contenders. This potential pivot represents what defense analyst Margaret Thompson calls the most significant shift in Canadian defense strategy since World War II. The timing coincides with global realignment, as nations reassess their strategic partnerships. Canada's possible cancellation of the F-35 deal could signal a broader trend of countries diversifying their defense relationships. Breaking news. Canada signals major shift in defense procurement strategy. In a surprising development, Canadian Defense Minister Bill Blair has indicated that Ottawa may be reconsidering its $13 billion F-35 fighter jet deal with the United States. This announcement comes amid escalating tensions between the Allies over trade and tariffs. Speaking after his reappointment under Prime Minister Mark Carney's new cabinet, Blair suggested that European alternatives, specifically the Eurofighter Typhoon and French Rafale, are now serious contenders for Canada's Air Force modernization program. While the United States remains our closest ally, we must explore all options available to ensure Canada's defense interests are best served, Blair stated. This potential pivot marks a shift from Canada's traditional reliance on American military hardware. The consideration of European fighters isn't new. Canada explored similar options in the early 2010s before choosing the F-35. However, the current political climate has altered the situation. European manufacturers have responded quickly. The Eurofighter consortium emphasizes their aircraft's versatility and lower maintenance costs, while Dassault touts the Rafale's adaptability to Canadian conditions. Though these aircraft may lack the F-35's stealth capabilities, they offer alternatives as Ottawa seeks to diversify its defense partnerships. Critics argue that Canada's proximity to the United States makes deviation from American military systems impractical. The F-35 program, adopted by allies including the UK, Italy, Australia, Norway, and Denmark, offers established logistics networks and interoperability benefits. Prime Minister Carney appears to be backing a more independent approach. While the United States remains our largest trading partner, we must maintain strategic flexibility, Carney noted. The debate reflects questions about Canada's defense autonomy and its response to increasingly unreliable U.S. trade policies. As one senior official noted, the era of automatic alignment with U.S. defense procurement may be ending. Breaking defense news. Canada contemplates historic shift from U.S. to European military hardware. In a development that could reshape North American defense relationships, Canada is considering abandoning its $13 billion F-35 fighter jet deal with the United States, potentially pivoting towards European alternatives amid escalating trade tensions between the allies. The planned acquisition of 88 F-35 jets, scheduled for delivery in 2026, was intended to modernize Canada's aging CF-18 fleet by the early 2030s. However, U.S. tariffs targeting Canadian dairy and steel industries have prompted Ottawa to reconsider this defense commitment. Defense Secretary Bill Blair stated, "How we are treated by our trade and defense partners affects major tenders. We may need to consider a Plan B." This sentiment was echoed by the Foreign Minister, suggesting a potential strategic pivot. European alternatives include the Eurofighter Typhoon, jointly produced by the UK, Germany, Italy, and Spain, France's Rafale, and Sweden's Gripen. While these fighters lack the F-35's stealth capabilities, they might offer better value propositions. Pentagon sources expressed concern that a Canadian withdrawal would severely impact bilateral relations. Canada is a close ally and F-35 partner. We hope they won't back down from such a significant commitment, one official stated. The potential cancellation represents more than just a procurement decision. It signals a possible strategic realignment in Canadian defense policy. While the F-35 remains technically superior, mounting frustration with U.S. trade policies may force Ottawa's hand toward alternative suppliers. Ottawa media outlets are already suggesting farewell to the F-35, though no final decision has been announced. This situation highlights the growing complexity of maintaining military partnerships while navigating challenging trade relationships with the United States. Breaking news: Canada-U.S. relations face critical test over F-35 fighter jet deal. In a significant shift, Canada is considering abandoning its $13 billion F-35 fighter jet deal with the United States, marking what experts call a potential continental divorce in military procurement. Prime Minister Mark Carney and Defense Minister Bill Blair have been sending mixed signals about the future of this crucial defense contract, leaving observers wondering whether Ottawa will cancel its largest military purchase in recent history. European alternatives are being considered. Manufacturers of the French Rafale, Eurofighter Typhoon, and Swedish Gripen are eager to fill the void. This possible pivot to European military hardware signals a fundamental shift in Canada's geopolitical alignment. "We need to find our own way," states Dr. Margaret Thompson, a defense analyst. "The post-NAFTA era has shown us the risks of overdependence on a single partner. The timing is sensitive as U.S.-Canada relations are strained by tariffs on steel and agricultural products." Public sentiment in Canada favors cancellation, with polls showing 67% support for European alternatives. U.S. officials warned on March 16, 2025, that Canada will pay a heavy price for such a decision. However, this threat has strengthened Canadian resolve to diversify its partnerships. The potential cancellation is part of a strategy to strengthen ties with Europe, including expanded trade agreements with the EU and defense cooperation with Britain, France, and Germany. Joint arms development projects are under discussion. As tensions escalate, the question remains: will Ottawa maintain its course toward European partnership, or will pressure from Washington force a reversal? The answer could reshape North American defense cooperation for decades. Carney and Blair continue to calibrate their positions, balancing diplomatic necessities with strategic interests. Their statements are being monitored for any indication of Canada's final decision. Breaking news: Canada's F-35 deal hangs in balance as U.S. relations face critical test. In what could be one of the most significant shifts in North American defense cooperation, Ottawa is expected to make a final decision on the controversial F-35 fighter jet program within the next 2 months. Two possible scenarios are emerging in this high-stakes diplomatic situation. The first scenario could see Canada canceling its $13 billion F-35 deal, potentially triggering economic retaliation from Washington through additional tariffs. The alternative would be a negotiated settlement, resolving both the fighter jet dispute and trade tensions. The controversy has expanded beyond military procurement to encompass trade relationships and territorial sovereignty, suggesting a transformation in Canada-U.S. relations. Prime Minister Mark Carney's government must choose between maintaining the traditional military partnership with the United States or pivoting towards European defense manufacturers. The question remains whether European aerospace companies can match the F-35's capabilities. Defense Minister Bill Blair's recent consultations with European manufacturers suggest Canada is exploring alternatives, though some analysts view these moves as negotiating tactics rather than genuine intention to break with U.S. defense procurement. The stakes are high for both nations. For Canada, this represents a potential watershed moment in its defense policy. For the U.S., it could signal a troubling shift in its defense relationship with its northern neighbor. As these developments unfold, observers note that this situation reflects broader changes in global defense partnerships. The outcome could set precedents for how allied nations navigate disagreements in an increasingly complex international environment. The coming weeks will reveal whether we're witnessing a fundamental shift in North American defense cooperation, or merely a temporary disruption in long-standing partnerships. The implications will resonate far beyond the immediate players involved.